My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds are geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic multiverses. Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
And since the microscope is made in Wakanda, it's made of pure vibranium. Because apparently in Wakanda, it is an endless resource.
I forgot about it, but in the beginning of the Black Panther movie, they explained that the vibranium comes from outer space, so that must mean there's vibranium on other planets.
That is true. Maybe we'll have a Guardians of the Galaxy Black Panther crossover when Wakanda runs out of vibranium and is no longer a dominant scientific powerhouse as a result.
You mean because they keep doing stuff like randomly giving it away in like full suits to random people?
Yeah.
But we're here today to talk about the latest Marvel Studios production for Disney Plus, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Or Snow Owl. Right?
Woo!
Well, in my house, I think the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a stupid title. I get it that they're trying to name all their shows essentially off of the characters, but it is just a mouthful. And it does not roll off the tongue at all.
Nope.
No, it's I don't know. I'm trying to think of a non-racist way to abbreviate the name, and it's not working too well right now. So I think I'll omit giving it new titles.
They should have just called it Sam and Bucky. Which would make it, because when the trailers first came out, people were like, dude, it's going to be like a buddy cop, comedy thing. Look how quippy they are. They're just, broing out. And then, to have it just be, Sam and Bucky, like a sitcom, and then, be the exact same, but just called that would be so good. I would love that.
And then they pull a WandaVision, and when Zemo joins in, it's they change the opening song to be Sam and Bucky and Zemo, and he's just inserting himself into a montage of them doing things together.
Yeah.
So in my household, we abbreviated the title to Winter Falcon, and then I took it one step further and named it Snowy Owl.
Mm-hmm.
Snowl.
So, Snowl.
You can be lazier if you try.
I mean, bringing back an anime reference, I think they could, if it wasn't already taken, The Rising of the Shield Hero would have been a great title for this show.
Yeah, actually, I mean, it has nothing to do with the fantasy setting, but, is it The Rising? I thought it was Shield Hero Rising.
Who knows? Someone will let us know.
What if they had just called the show Shields, and it could have been a metaphor about how everyone has shields up, Bucky is shielding himself from society still, and at first Sam wants to shield himself from just having to deal with all that race stuff that he doesn't want to, which is completely fair, but then also there's literal shields, and a number of people have shields. I don't know, that could have worked and been
even if it was even if it was the legacy of the shield or the something of that fact, because you could make a drink
Captain America Legacy, because Captain America isn't actually, or the original Captain America isn't in it, but there are Captain
you can make a drinking game out of how many times they say the word shield in this, and they're not talking about they're never talking about shield the organization. They're literally the amount of conversation around Captain America's shield. I was like, this could easily be a drinking game.
There's a couple where S.H.I.E.L.D. is mentioned because Sharon exists.
Anyway, let's just get into some of the history here. So, like all the original Marvel Disney Plus content, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was announced at San Diego's Comic-Con in 2019, the last in-person Comic-Con they had. And this was probably, of all of the announcements about Phase 4, this was the thing I was most excited about, because I've said this before, the Captain America series of films is my favorite kind of, I guess, franchise within the MCU. And as soon as I heard the title, I was like, dumb title, but I get what they're going with. It's an opportunity to continue the story of like what happens now that Captain America, if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame, Captain America gets old at the end. And I really thought it was going to be more of a kind of like a versus storyline, because people might know in the comic books, there is precedent for both Bucky and Sam to be Captain America. There have been different points in the history where both characters have taken on the role of Captain America. And I genuinely thought it was going to be like a kind of like a fight between the two of them to decide who would become the next Captain America.
Interesting.
So I was very excited, and I was on board for it from day one. My issues with the title aside, but when you guys heard about this show coming out, what were your thoughts?
It's the one I was least excited for of the stuff they announced. I do, like, Sam and Bucky were both good side characters, and like from Sam's first appearance, he's been a really fun character that also has some depth to him, which is, you know, it's a really good balance to strike for sure. Like, I liked him in the movies, and you know, Bucky is great and obviously has had a lot of stuff revolve around him in the Cap movies, but it just, you know, there's just, neither of them were like my favorite characters. I was a lot more excited for like WandaVision. I've been an active Scarlet Vision shipper from the comics for years, so I was very excited to see more of that relationship. I'm very excited for Loki. I've been like really hyped for them to actually do something with Hawkeye for a long time. Just everything else they mentioned, I was like, yeah, like I've heard of that. I'm excited for that pretty much. And I was just like, yeah, like that'll be cool, I guess. And I didn't have much opinion on it. And now some of the other, like Armor Wars and some of the other stuff that's happening, like that's definitely that was lower on my radar than this one. So it wasn't my lowest expectation, but I wasn't out. I watched it because I'm an MCU stan, so I had to watch it, but it probably wouldn't have been super high on my radar any otherwise. Not to say it wasn't good, just it wasn't, it's not my type of thing, really.
When I heard about it, I could not have cared less about more Marvel things happening.
And here you are talking about it. Good for you. You know, round of applause.
Sure, it has nothing to do with who I married, clearly.
Hey, we recently did a rewatch from Iron Man of the MCU movies, and you're the one who started that, so it's not entirely my fault that our lives revolve around Marvel a little bit.
But it is actually, it is Falcon and the Winter Soldier's fault, because there were things I clearly did not remember from some of the more forgettable movies. So I think it did work out pretty well. And now, like that was in my initial reaction. I did quite enjoy this show, but I also, I don't know. I feel like I don't know if there will be a specific time for us to talk about it, but can we like quickly just talk about how Steve Rogers completely abandoned Bucky? Like, this was the only person who had a similar experience to him, because like, yes, he had the memories of the Winter Soldier, but he was mostly frozen without memories for a super long time and a man out of time, and like it was hard for him to adapt. And then at the end of Endgame, you know, Steve just decides to selfishly break all their rules, break the timeline continuum, and ditch Bucky. Like, come on, guys.
Not cool, Steve.
Yes. Maybe we just get that out of the way now, because the ending of Avengers Endgame, that is one of the things people still kind of have issues with, the fact that Captain America went against a lot of things that he would have stood for and things that the team had agreed shouldn't be done to kind of live a happy life and grow old with Peggy Carter.
And it undid his previous character development, because in previous movies, in the Cap movies, part of what they were exploring was him learning to live in this new modern world and like accept the situation he's in now, and like try to live his best life, because there's nothing he could do about the fact that he lost out on what would have been his life. And
except make out with the niece of his love.
Oh yeah, that was yeah, his relationship with Sharon, real weird, especially since they only kissed after he specifically knew that she was related to Peggy, which makes it a lot more sketch. But yeah, no, it's especially because it was the Russo brothers did those movies. So you'd think they would respect the character development they had done in those movies and not undo it in Endgame. Like, cause
I mean,
sometimes
look, they needed Chris Evans wanted to be out, so they had to I guess they didn't want to just kill off everybody, so they found a way to have him exit stage left.
Yeah, but it does bring in because he did have the beginning of a relationship with Sharon. Again, you could just call this movie Captain America Fallout. Steve messed up.
Well, maybe that's a good point as any to kind of set us up for what we're talking about. So, Beef Pork Ribs, give us the Blu-ray case description of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
They're super soldiers running loose.
Great. I got a vibranium arm. I can take them.
Hello, girl, kick your
Our country is vulnerable.
We need new heroes. Get in.
That's not happening.
Why didn't you use the metal arm?
I don't always think of it immediately. I'm right-handed.
Now streaming only on Disney Plus.
In a post-snap world where a teenager has the most powerful weapons in the world and doesn't fully realize it, there are also geopolitical crises. People have come back, and now they're being put aside. Follow as the Winter Soldier is trying to atone for his previous life. Sam is desperately trying to run away / accept the legacy of Steve Rogers. And other people are creating trouble for them to mop up.
So this was meant to be the first Disney Plus Marvel series. It was originally
that's also really obvious.
That it was supposed to come out originally in November 2020, but as we've discussed before, COVID-19, production delays. They shot part of this in Europe, so it was kind of harder for them to film it. So it got delayed, and WandaVision ended up being the first series to come out instead. And this is definitely more conventional MCU content. Like, it very much feels like another entry in the Captain America series.
Yeah, and it does continue the story. It does. And I mean, I was making a joke about it being like a fallout of Captain Rogers, but it does feel like kind of like an Avengers Fallout series. A lot more than WandaVision was very specifically Wanda Maximoff is not dealing with grief properly. And this was definitely the world is not really dealing with the fallout of the snap very well. And as much as it was something that was kind of hit in Spider-Man Far From Home, they kind of skimmed it rather than actually they paid lip service but didn't actually address the issues that might come from it.
Which makes sense because Peter is a teenager who doesn't understand the issues that came from it. He's not paying attention to the broad global implications. He's just like, wow, this was really weird, and now my friend's younger brother is older than her. That's freaky.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all that affects this New York
the
teenager.
whole Nick Fury's whole storyline in that movie, it does show a bit of I was gone for 5 years, I don't know what's going on, and so therefore we have to be more vigilant than we were before.
And yet I'm not actually here.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a good point. It makes sense that this would have been the first series to come up because it does, in much more directly than WandaVision or Far From Home, addresses the effect of the blip, as it's called in universe, and what that whole thing of everyone coming back and what does that look like. It actually dives into that a lot more, which is something that the Captain America movies kind of did even before that. They were always kind of responding to what had happened in the previous kind of big event movies. It's well, if these things were to happen in this universe, how would the world and how would governments react to the existence of aliens or the destruction of an entire country? And I think that's very kind of on brand. That's kind of part of why I like this Captain America series, is that it does touch on those things. I know it's not everyone's meat and potatoes, and unfortunately, I don't know if it's to its benefit or detriment that this show will be compared to WandaVision, because they are very different.
I honestly think it'll be to its complement. I think it is a better show. WandaVision was much more original and was trying to do something different, so I don't think it'll be too detrimental to it. But I do think this was definitely a better show, more coherent, and like I know people did get a little bit carried away with the fan theories for WandaVision, but it was set up in such a way to make it like there was an air of mystery about what might be happening. Whereas, like, other than setting up Young Avengers, Falcon and Winter Soldier didn't really expand on the universe that much, which I think is a good thing because you could have easily had them like, there were a lot of problems in Europe. You could have started introducing Latveria and set up for Doom showing up, which is hopefully going to happen. You could have. There were other directions that, like, the only comeback to Sokovia was very small and wasn't like huge. Like, it was still part of the story, but it wasn't like a massive change. They still kept themselves very reasonable and focused. Yeah.
Yeah, like with hindsight, I have a more negative impression of WandaVision because I feel like I was emotionally manipulated by the show. Like they were intentionally teasing things that ended up being for naught to kind of capture my interest. And I didn't feel that with this show.
Yeah, this show feels more like what they used to do, where they were like setting up things that might potentially happen, but they're not 100% sure yet. Like the earlier Marvel movies did, that might be more Easter eggs than actual, like, if it never happens, people won't get annoyed. Whereas, like, I don't know, there was kind of a promise, implicit promise with Scarlet, with WandaVision, that it would be bringing in the magical universe even more. Because, like, let's be honest, it's barely started going on. Like the one Doctor Strange movie and like a little bit of some things in Guardians kind of alluded to it, but really haven't gotten much.
Well, I think the other problem I had with WandaVision is that I knew things were happening later. Like I knew that Doctor Strange was going to be in the new Spider-Man. I knew that she was going to be the next Doctor Strange. So I guess I was kind of creating these expectations for WandaVision. It's like it has to set up what these other things are going to do. But up until yesterday, after the show had finished, we didn't know what was going to be next for the characters in like this TV show. And we'll get to that because I think it's fairly noteworthy. But in some senses, this feels very much like a sequel to Captain America Civil War because some of the plot threads and characters we haven't seen since that movie, which, believe it or not, came out 5 years ago, are continued here. And timeline-wise, in case people are wondering, this is set 6 months after Avengers Endgame, so 6 months after everyone's returned to life. WandaVision was set like a month after the blip, and Far From Home was supposed to be 8 months after the blip. So if you want to like draw it out, WandaVision came first, and then this is like 5 months later, and then the events of Far From Home are like 2 months after this.
Which would explain how it was easier for a group of teenagers to go to Europe from America.
So you kind of alluded to this, Mjolnir, that the Captain America movies revolved a fair bit around Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier story, and just him dealing with all of the things that were happening to him. So this series does sort of continue his character, and I thought it was very interesting how they kind of like say like what, this, because this is a TV series and it's focusing on these minor characters, it does give you a lot more time to just like kind of live in the characters' worlds, and you get to know more about their personalities and what they're thinking about. Like you see the Winter Soldier go to therapy and you kind of like think about all the things that have happened to him in his life. It's like, yeah, this dude probably has a lot to unpack.
That he doesn't want to unpack. He's not the most what's the word?
Willing?
He's not the most cooperative patient, for sure. He does not want to talk about his issue. Like, it's one of the, I don't know, it was interesting because like Bucky at the beginning of the show, he like acknowledges he has issues. He just doesn't want to talk about them with anyone. He's like, yeah, this is just my thing that I kind of want to deal with alone, even though I know that's probably not smart, but I don't know how to talk to other people about this. And it's good. And I think it was nice seeing over the course of the show him opening up a bit more and being willing to accept help and take other people's advice and be like, oh, it's not just me against the world anymore. People do want to help me.
You could argue that there was a slight missed opportunity for Sam to specifically directly help him because, Sam is a therapist or
Counselor.
counselor. Yeah, he's a counselor. So, like, I guess, but at the same time, they did kind of lean into that in his relationship with Kari.
Carly.
So that was good.
Yeah, so obviously both of their names are in the title. Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes are meant to be our lead characters here. And I always found their relationship interesting in the movies because, they have very brief interactions with each other. And the reality is, like, they are not really friends. They're kind of like acquaintances and they have a mutual, like, best friend.
I mean,
and I feel like this is relatable to real life because I have people in my life who I only know because they're friends with a friend of mine. And, sometimes just because you have a mutual friend does not mean that you necessarily will get along with that person.
Yeah, and I think it also goes into, like, what you were talking about when you said you thought it might be them fighting for the role of Captain America. It is a little bit, especially at the beginning, them fighting to, like, no, Steve liked me better. No, Steve liked me better. While simultaneously, Steve left this big issue for me. Nah, it was bigger for me. Like, you know what I mean?
It was more like Steve was a bigger part of my life than yours. Than, like, because of the way Steve is too, right? Like, Steve is the type of person who tries not to play favorites. Like, Bucky is clearly his favorite, but, he's not the type of friend who he'd do his best not to make that obvious. But so it is more of like, this is the impact Steve left on me and with me, and that's really important to me. And it's like, yeah, well, he was really important to me too. It's not all about you and Steve.
And then they only start agreeing when they realize that John Walker has nothing to do with him.
Yeah, they're like, well, we both have more claim to Steve than you do, so...
Yeah, and this might be a spoiler, but aside from a vocal cameo in, like, the beginning of the first episode, Steve Rogers does not appear at all in this series. However, his legacy is all over this series. Not only is he, like, the idea of Captain America is discussed at length, his impact on the world is discussed at length. Different characters and their recollection of him is discussed at length. So even though he's not in the show, he definitely has a shadow kind of looms over everything. Probably in the same way you could think of how Iron Man is not in Far From Home, but his kind of shadow looms over that movie as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a big part of, because the MCU is in a weird place where they're trying to transition to a new kind of what's it called?
Set of heroes?
Yeah, there's a word for it. Lineup? Yes, lineup. Marvel is trying to push a new lineup of heroes because they've kind of cycled through, they had the main 6 Avengers that they introduced, and they did stuff with them, more things with some of them than others, but they've done a lot of stuff with them, and now they're trying to, like, they've been slowly, like, switching out this lineup to make a whole new lineup of different people. And because it's a really tricky thing, and it's why comics get lazy and just bring people back to life instead of doing this, is trying to translate people's loyalty to a character to, like, and then write out that character in a good way, and then transfer their loyalty to a new character so that they'll still follow the universe, which is really tricky. So, like, you can see why they're doing that, where they're being like, we're not trying to ignore Cap and Iron Man, we're acknowledging you loved them, and we're trying to, like, mention them a lot so your love for them will rub off on these new characters.
Oh, you're right.
And I knew, like, as soon as this show was announced, it was going to be about who will be the next Captain America. Like, it was clear from day one that, and, spoiler, by the end of this, it is clear who the next Captain America will be. We'll mention in spoilers who it is, just in case you are listening to this and haven't watched the show yet.
I'm disappointed they didn't come in with a secret, like, Hawkeye becomes Captain America at the end, because that would have been hilarious.
Uh-oh, you just spoiled it. It's not Clint Barton, guys. I'm sorry. Mjolnir spoiling everything.
In the comics, he got offered the role when Steve died for a while in the comics. When they were like, no, guys, we really killed off Captain America. We swear, it's totally for real. It was not. But he was one of the people who got offered the shield. Like, Clint is canonically, in the comics, one of the only people who can throw the shield correctly, which I think is really cool. But I also understand why they didn't want to meander off a little bit about that. But I think it's a fun fact.
I mean, what's his name? Oh.
What is his name?
The villain in Daredevil.
Bullseye?
Bullseye could, right? Because he can throw anything.
Probably. I'm not sure.
Confirmed. Bullseye is the next Captain America. Sorry, I spoiled it again.
I'm not sure if they've established that.
So Sharon Carter and Baron, well, he wasn't a Baron when we saw him in Civil War, but apparently he was a Baron the whole time to really tie in his comic name. But Zemo is back. They're both back from the Civil War movie. And I think this show does interesting things with them. You definitely see a lot more of Zemo than you do of Sharon Carter. And there's things about them that we'll have to mention in spoilers because they're pretty specific. But all that to say, I think that it was great to bring them back, and they did interesting things with them.
I'm going to go out and say it. Zemo is my favorite character in this show.
But he gets, you know what it is? He gets the same stuff like Sam got to be like the fun, quippy side character in the Captain America movies, but now he's like the main character, so he has to like, you know, do some more like depth and you know, do all the protagonist stuff. So now Zemo gets to be the fun, quippy side character who does the little dance, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, he's so cute!" Like Zemo's great. I did like him in it, but like I think part of that is just the way people tend to write characters and how you can get away with more like interesting, kind of fun, quirky things with someone who isn't the main character.
I think so, but I also did like that he is still the same character. Like you did say like, oh, they changed it or added that he's a Baron, which, you know, he had been established to be like part of the military, which, you know, in Europe, for especially a country that like Sokovia until recently was still, if not a monarchy, at least like a country in which the feudal system had left its mark for a long time, makes a lot of sense. And like his motivations aren't changed. He's still very much the same person and has the same agenda until the very last, just about the last scene of the show.
So this is a 6-episode miniseries that each part is almost an hour long. So you could think of this as like a 6-hour-long movie. And admittedly, if I were to think about if they were to try and turn this into a movie, because it does feel like a movie. It often doesn't feel like a TV show. It does feel very cinematic. So I'm like, if they were to try and take this and shut it down to be something that could be just a kind of done in one movie, would it work?
I think they would need to cut out a few characters and storylines for it to work. I think it could.
You lose a lot of the character depth. Like
you would lose everything to do with Sam's family would have to just not be part of the movie. A lot of Bucky's background and Zemo would have to become just a plot device rather than a character.
So you're highlighting how this is benefiting from being a TV series, because those are all things we didn't get in the movies. Like until this show, I'm like, oh yeah, Sam Wilson should have like a family, because you know, everyone has a family, but we've never heard of them before.
Yeah, I think the biggest loss would be, weirdly enough, John Walker's story arc. If it was a movie,
they just wouldn't have time. Like,
yeah.
They wouldn't have time to even attempt to explore that complicated of a person.
Yeah, and I think that
2.5 hour movie.
He's the one who needs it the most.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so good way to bring it up. So some of the new characters they introduce here, I kind of see there's 2 principal characters who they introduced in this thing for the first time, and they both serve as like a foil to the idea of Steve Rogers, because you have, on the one hand, you have Kari Morgenthau, I don't remember what her name is. She's the leader of this group called the Flag Smashers, and they're all about kind of getting rid of national borders in the world post-snap to just allow everyone to kind of live freely. And then you have this guy, John Walker, who is this American military guy who is appointed by the U.S. government to be the new Captain America. And as the show goes on and you learn more about these characters, you can kind of see, in my mind, I see them as both like a different reflection of who Steve Rogers was. And because of how they behave, you can see, oh yeah, like there's things of them that are like Captain America, but they do things that are not Captain America like.
And it really highlights how Steve was just really lightning in a bottle of just a genuinely good person who did his best, and somehow his best was usually enough. And it's really hard to do that. And it's good to have that type of person as a role model, but you have to be aware. You need to be more aware of your own character flaws when you're trying to emulate that than both of those people were.
And like from the second he was introduced at the end of the first episode in the suit, like my roommates were immediately against him, like, boo, who do you think you are? You're not Captain America. And I was like, guys, give him a chance. Like, but it was incredible to see how immediate the fan backlash was towards this new Captain America, because even though my friends were just kind of like generally like, boo, you're not Captain America, Wyatt Russell, who plays John Walker, actually received death threats on social media because some people are so, I guess, attached to who Captain America or how they perceive Captain America that they felt strongly enough to threaten the man.
Which is ridiculous. It's one of those things, like, I, as someone who understands how movies and TV shows work and also has enough knowledge of the comics and like the source material like than the average person probably, it was like from the get-go, like, I feel like everyone knew by the end of this series Bucky or Sam would be Cap. Like, everyone knew that, was my understanding. But even with that separation, when that dude walked on screen, I was like, screw you, bud. And his face looks wrong, and he looks so stupid in that helmet. It's so funny. They did a very good job with the character design and stuff. But, he walked on, and you're just immediately like, this looks wrong, this is incorrect, no thank you. And then you flip-flop on this character so much. Like, the next episode starts out by trying to humanize him and make him more sympathetic, and then, like, later on he does some other stuff, and he's all over the place. And, like, I think that's part of what the character is supposed to be, that, like, he is not a very stable individual, and that doesn't make him an inherently evil person. It just means he is not really in control of himself or all there. But it was a very interesting direction to go, and I think they knew it would be kind of just polarizing because there's such a legacy of Captain America, and it makes sense that they wanted to explore that by making a really flawed person try to pick up that legacy. But it is, and I've been online a bit with some different fan sites and stuff, and like on Reddit and things, and seeing people's different reactions to John Walker. And as the series progresses, right, and you see more of him, and he is a really polarizing character, which I don't like. I think some people are taking it a little too seriously. Because it's like, yeah, he is supposed to represent that there's a problem with certain things and this and that, but that doesn't mean he is the problem.
Yeah, but I think maybe we can talk about it a bit more in spoiler, but it makes sense for what ultimately happens to him at the end of the show.
Mm-hmm. I think it was I think what they ended on with him made sense and worked with the character.
But I think also was where they were always heading with him, mm-hmm. which also informs a little bit what they do with the character.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because, like, in the show, the general public is very responsive to him being Captain America. Like, people look for his autograph, and he's like celebrated in the media until certain things happen. But it just goes to show how, like, the general public within the Marvel universe, like, just saw Captain America more as like this symbol than an actual person. It's only those who like knew Captain America well or have a very strong opinion of the idea of Captain America that are in universe having a hard time accepting him. We, of course, on the outside, who have our own attachment to the idea of who Captain America is, are reacting strongly to it. Because I agree, I think they must have been intentional. That helmet does not look like it fit his head properly.
Yeah, like, and it's very realistic the way the public immediately reacts, I think, because obviously, especially because the legend of Captain America, Steve is something else beyond the rest of the Avengers. The Avengers in general have a reputation in the world, but Steve has been a legend since the 40s. Like,
He's got a museum.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
he's
think
been a war hero. He's been, he's had so much time for his name to build up in mythos and this and that, that even though the real people do know that there's a man behind that mask, but even that man has been mythologized so much that it's kind of synonymous with a mask, and it's this whole thing, so people just immediately were like, yeah, well, we've, like, literally, I have never known a world in which Captain America was not a symbol for my country and the goodness of the world and of my country and all this stuff. And obviously people want to trust their government and be like, yeah, of course my government knows what a symbol Cap is and would put the right man in charge. Like, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I think most people do, especially when it's something so official. So, like, I can see why, until proven otherwise, people would be like, yeah, Captain America, the symbol for truth and justice and the American way, but, like, the way it should be. The way he always has been.
And I think one of the other important things is Steve Rogers hasn't made public, like, appearances since the 40s. Like, after he was on Frozen, he wasn't really in the public's eye. Like, whenever the Avengers did things, like, he appeared, but he wasn't, like, doing, he wasn't going on tour anymore and doing everything that John Walker does at the beginning, where he does show up for the crowds and everything. And it makes sense that you would look up to a guy who is, present.
Now, the Flag Smashers, they're kind of billed as the villains of this series, but I feel like they do enough to kind of, like, help you understand, like, where they're coming from.
I just still don't quite understand what their ideology was, and do not think it was explored or explained enough.
I mean, the thing I was going to say is, actually, I think the show did, although, yeah, their specific endgame was still a little bit vague, but I do think the show did enough to show what they were that, like, I mean, this is not really a spoiler, I guess. I don't know, it might be a spoiler, but, like, Sam has a nice speech in the last episode, and some of the things he says is, like, I understand he's talking to specific people, but, like, as the audience, I was like, yeah, no, we got that. We saw the show. And I do understand that in universe he was talking to other people who clearly did not necessarily get the message, but it did seem a little heavy-handed for somebody who has just seen the entire show and has seen what these people have done.
Speaking of heavy-handed, this series tackles the issue of race in a way that really only the Black Panther movie has done so far. And to me, it was a little jarring, just because, Sam Wilson has been in many movies and he's never really once referred to the fact that he is African American. Like, he was just a character who had motivations and did things. Like, his race wasn't so intrinsically linked to his identity. But in this show, he brings it up several times. It's brought up by other characters, and there is, like, a whole racial inequality subplot of this series.
I feel like a lot of the time it was brought up by other people and then he acknowledged it. Right? Like, yes, it does happen a little bit more, but I still, like, I feel like that it was other people who made it more heavy-handed rather than Sam himself, if that makes sense.
And also, the way the Avengers movies work and stuff, it's very, and, like, they have gotten better at this. They've been trying to explore things and have things it's not 100% cut and dry. The bad guy, this is the bad guy, and we punch the bad guy, we're the good guys. Like, they do explore gray areas in the movies and things like that. But it's still a very focused narrative about, this is the goal we have to do, and, like, we just gotta defeat the bad guy, and this is the problem. And part of what I liked about this show and why I was so excited about Marvel doing TV shows was giving us room to breathe and, like, seeing these characters exist in normal everyday life in the real world more, because in the Avengers movies they're not in the real world. They're in a very specific situation that has a specific start and a specific end, and they have to like get from point A to B as quickly as possible to like save a million lives or whatever. It makes sense that Sam's not talking about race issues when they're fighting literal aliens who just want to destroy the world.
And I think also, like, mostly in the movies, Sam appears in the military, which has done a lot of efforts to fix or bridge the race gap in America. I feel like that is one of the environments where it's a lot less of an issue than a lot of other ones. So the fact that you take him out of that environment, and again, it's not like from the get-go in the first episode he starts talking about that. It is very much after he comes home and things start to build up.
Yeah, it wasn't like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It was jarring for me because I'm just like, I'm not used to hearing these characters like address this so directly, kind of over and over again, and it just made me realize, yeah, there's clearly different people writing this, and again, that's not a bad thing. It just means like it was something that stood out to me as something different from the movies, and naturally, my not knowing much about Captain America comic books, when I see the episodes play out and I hear this whole storyline around Isaiah Bradley, I made the assumption that they were obviously trying to respond to the whole Black Lives Matter kind of political movement going on in the US. And it was only after the fact I realized that turns out all this stuff about Isaiah Bradley is actually from the comics. So I was like, okay, I made an assumption, and I just want to publicly, for everyone listening, I made an assumption about the intentions of the writers, and I was wrong.
Yeah, I think the major intention with Isaiah Bradley was setting up Eli Bradley.
Yeah, they are going to be announcing Young Avengers any day now. I'm calling it. There have been way too many Young Avengers references, and I'm very excited. And I just really want the Loki series now to end with Loki getting de-aged to a little twink teenager, because at some point that happens, and then he's part of the Young Avengers, and it's really good. And I'm so excited. I really want there to be Young Avengers.
So for people who are wondering what we're talking about, there's a character introduced in this show called Isaiah Bradley, and he has a grandson named Eli Bradley, who in the comic books is a character called Patriot, who is part of this group called the Young Avengers.
And it's really great. The comics, the original run is good, and then like I have the run with young Loki, which is also good. I don't know about the stuff in between, but like it's a pretty solid series.
So all that to say, after the show finished airing on Friday, it was announced on Saturday that a fourth Captain America movie is in development now, and it'll obviously be following the finale of the Falcon Winter Soldier series. So we can't talk about that anymore without going into spoilers. So all to say, if you have not seen the Falcon and Winter Soldier, I'd recommend it. It'll definitely be helpful for you if you want to see the next Captain America movie.
Yeah.
It's good. It has I think it had a good balance of character development and the shooty-punchy, fighty stuff, and tackling, like we said, some more intense issues about race and this and that I think they handled quite well. So it's a good mix. I think there's something in there for everyone. Like some of the stuff more so than others, but like I think there's enough different stuff in there that everyone will get something out of it.
So there'll be a time code in the description where you can skip around our time in the spoilerverse if you don't want any spoilers for the series. But we're going into the spoilerverse now. I just have a couple notes about the MCU in general that come up with the show. I feel like we're getting back into the Phase 2 era where there's not enough of an explanation as to why other characters aren't around to help. That was a big issue in Phase 2, is like, okay, the president has been kidnapped in Iron Man 3 and no one's around to help. In this series, in the finale, it's set in New York City. I'm like, could they not just at least write an explanation as to why Spider-Man or Doctor Strange couldn't just pop in to help out? It seemed very odd to me.
I mean, I feel like there will be an explanation as to why Doctor Strange wasn't there, because he hasn't been there in anything apparently. But Yeah, Spider-Man not being, especially because Far From Home has come out and he's actually there.
Yeah, it's like, don't set it in New York. Like, why are you doing this to yourself?
Especially because most of the other issues were set in Europe. Like, just have it happen in Zurich or in Geneva. Like,
Or even another American city. Like, if it's in, like, I don't care, Tampa or Seattle or
well, that
Chicago.
doesn't make much sense that an international conference would happen there.
Yeah, I guess.
That's why.
Then,
That's why I
see
said
Don
like Europe.
You see Rhodey in the first episode. It's like, okay, Rhodey, what are you doing? You taking a nap while this is happening? Like, why don't you help out?
Rhodey's less, but Rhodey is more of the big guns. Like, that's not really, they are doing more of the more like subtle spy-ish things. That's not really Rhodey's wheelhouse, right? So,
I still feel like in the finale they would have sent him in.
In the finale, yeah, maybe he could have showed up again in the finale, but for most of it I felt it was kind of nice they acknowledged Rhodey's existence, and because they're both military men, he and Sam are both military men and stuff, and they had like a little connection there and everything, and he was like, yeah, bruh, I get it.
I actually didn't like that scene because I'm like, why are you bugging Sam about not being Captain America when, like, I feel like someone could ask you the same question, but why aren't Iron Man yet?
That's a fair point, and Rhodey is Iron Man in the comics, isn't he?
At some point, maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember if it's him, but yeah, because in Secret Wars, Iron Man is black.
Yeah, he's definitely Iron Man.
And
for
so
parts
he is actually in the traditional Iron Man for
that's cool.
a good stint in
at least I know, like you said, they're doing Armor Wars, so like that'll give him a chance to address that legacy. But
yeah,
my one roommate brought up the point. It's like, okay, Steve Rogers was alive during the blip, and he did absolutely nothing to help Sharon while she was kind of stuck over in Madripoor. Like, did he just forget that she existed?
I mean, we kind of talked about this before the podcast. It's more because of the actress than...
Yeah, but in universe, there isn't a good explanation as to why Steve just did nothing to help her. I guess he was just so sad about everyone dying.
He found out that she was Power Broker and decided to not tell anybody, but also not help her.
Yeah, we called that right away. As soon as there was the episode about the Power Broker, it's like, I bet it's Sharon because she's going down the dark side.
I thought, I don't know.
She still has a weird end game. Like, I guess she didn't know that Zemo was going to shoot the scientist, but...
Yeah, some of the things that she seemed to do, which directly interfered with the Power Broker stuff, like, or seemed to, like, yeah, like, oh, well, now you have no way of making more serum, dumbass, because you led them to the guy who makes the serum. Like, anyway, some of that stuff made me think she maybe wasn't Power Broker, but then, like, when she was being real sketchy, I was like, oh, so, like, she's at least working for Power Broker? And then it's like, no, nah, I guess she's just Power Broker. Cool. Well, by the last episode, it was like, she must be Power Broker because there's no other characters, and it's weird to introduce some random dude now and be like, oh, that's Power Broker. That's a Power Broker.
Well, it's kind of neat. I don't think we have many instances in the MCU of like a hero turning into a full-on villain, so I'm kind of excited for this, like, as it continues on.
I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting they've decided to do with her. I've also heard theories, which I like, about that she's going to be the villain in Armor Wars because she's leaking government secrets because Sam was dumb and got her back in the fold and doesn't know she's Power Broker. Yeah, but like also he put his butt on the line for her, so like Sam is going to be screwed once people figure out that, like, whoops, I guess we shouldn't have pardoned her.
Yeah, that's true.
But then, and because there's a secret invasion thing happening too, that I've heard theories that she'll be like the villain in Armor Wars, and then it'll be revealed she's actually a Skrull, and then that'll lead into secret invasion and stuff, which could happen. I don't know. I think it's an interesting idea.
I was kind of so this is really nitpicky, but like in the comic books, Baron Zemo has this like purple mask, and when they first were doing promos for this, they made a point of showing you that Daniel Bruhl would wear the mask as Zemo. But in the end, he wears it for one scene for seemingly no reason. And I was like, you jerks, take all the time to tease it up, and then ends up being almost nothing. Like, you have him wearing a costume that is kind of like a Baron Zemo outfit, but without the mask. I'm like,
I liked his little fur-lined coat that just was like a little fancy and extra. Like I thought it was a good nod. I think the fact that he only ever wears the mask once makes it weirder than if he hadn't worn the mask or if he had worn it a couple times. And I thought like there was this. They made this big moment where he grabs the mask and is like, "Yeah, I'll wear this at some point." And there's no in-universe reason for that to have been a moment or for him to wear it. I thought they were going to do a reveal like, I don't know, it's something his kid knit for him, or something like some sort of connection that when he puts it on, he's like, I'm embodying like the revenge for my family, or I'm
Interesting.
embodying this or that.
I heard a theory
thought-
that it was meant to like remind people of Thanos, to kind of like mock the Avengers, like, haha, you guys really screwed up.
I don't know. I thought that when he looked at it and then dropped it was like, it's not worth it. That's not who I am anymore. Like, I thought that if they had just shown it and him never wear it, then that would have still been okay. But it was kind of strange that he... Speaking of... that he never wore it. But speaking of strange things with Zemo, sorry, this is not on the agenda, but, like... Why did the Wakandans hand him over to, like, the world government to put back into the raft? Like, that seemed really strange and out of character, specifically for them, like, and how much they wanted to grab him, you know?
Well, I mean, what's his name? T'Challa kind of forgave him, or at least like decided not to kill him at the end of Civil War, and at that point he handed him over to the world government. So
I
don't know why they
suppose,
wouldn't.
but still.
The vibe of the Dora Milaje, I think I said that right. The vibe they had when they showed up was,
We are here to kill him.
we're here to kill him or take. The vibe they had was very specifically, y'all messed up. We shouldn't have trusted you with this dude. Him being either dead or incarcerated is important to us, so we're going to take this into our own hands. He's ours now. That was the vibe when they first showed up. So, yeah, I think until they literally said they were taking him to the raft, we were like, oh, okay, so they're going to take him and keep him in a Wakandan prison, and, like, I don't know, like, Wakanda's a weird, like, kind of a weird place that is starting to work more with other countries, but is still very exclusive. But also, all the other countries do really want to work with them because they have vibranium and stuff like that. So so even if the American government had a problem with this, they'd be like, well, you let him get away, and do you want to start a war over this guy? No, he's still locked up. It's just our problem now, and it would have been fine, like diplomatic immunity or whatever.
I did for a second think that Zemo would be brought to Wakanda and would be instrumental in Claw coming back. As Claw, the Master of Sound.
I want Claw to come back so bad. Oh my gosh.
So is Steve Rogers dead? Because he's shown in like the slideshow of dead people in Far From Home, and in this one, people are like, "Where is he? We don't know what happened to him." And I was like, they didn't really give us a clear answer. Like, did old Cap just pass away, or did he like return to his time? Yeah, does that even matter? I guess at this point,
No, it doesn't.
I think with what they did in Far From Home specifically, I think they were just going off of the general public does not know the details of what happened. They know that the Avengers fought Thanos and won, and after that, Cap wasn't around anymore. So they were like, well, guess he died in battle.
right?
Yeah, I think it's just the general consensus people have.
So John Walker, I've heard some people say that like his redemption at the end comes too quick. Like he seems to, he has a big fall from grace, and then even at the end of the 5th episode in the post-credit scene, you get the sense that he's coming back as like a villain, and then he has like a moment where he chooses to do the right thing, and then all of a sudden things are better for him.
I do agree it was a little bit quick, but also, like, and we're in spoilers now, he is U.S. agent. He was always set up to be U.S. agent, and that means he's supposed to be an anti-hero. But he would still, like, it still makes sense that he would save people who were directly in danger in front of him, but also, like, he will kill people. He will not be Captain America. He's going to be a little more ruthless, a little more covert, and a little more, like, unafraid to do what needs to be done, which I think his speech was kind of there. And I think that, Mjolnir talked about it a little bit. He is kind of all over the place, and so I don't think it was a full redemption arc, because as much as he's like excited to be like to have a new mission, he and his wife are hugging and like it's this happy thing. Like I feel like U.S. Agent has a dark enough presence in the comics that people who know who he is are like, yeah, but I'm sorry, you're going to be doing things you dislike still, but at the same time are okay with it. I don't know.
I found him to be a very interesting character in this show because you can clearly see he has some form of PTSD from his time in war, and you can see that even though he's like celebrated as a decorated officer, he doesn't feel like a hero. He doesn't feel like he's done anything worth celebrating. And he sees this opportunity to be Captain America as his chance to actually do something that feels good. And he has like the desire, I don't know if it's really an altruistic desire to do good, rather he wants to feel like he's doing something good.
Yeah, and he wants to be a hero, but he's not willing to put in the work to like actually be a hero, if that makes sense. Like he kind of just wanted, yeah, like it feels like he wanted the easy way of like, oh, well, I'm wearing the Captain America suit, that automatically makes me Captain America. He was very excited to be Captain America and just have that shortcut to becoming a hero. And when it's his adorable little like kind of giggle and like I'm back at the end there, it's just so he's so excited to have a purpose again. And that's what's, I think, part of what's scary about that character is that that's the thing. He has this dogged determination and stubbornness that like that he has this very specific goal that he doesn't even know what the goal is, but it's somehow specific, that he clearly is the kind of person who needs orders and needs a purpose and needs to feel like this is the thing I'm supposed to do, and without it I am nothing and I am aimless and I cannot handle life without some sort of like symbol behind me.
And I think that also highlights again one of the big differences between him and Steve Rogers is that Steve Rogers wanted to do good, he would stick to his own moral code. He had his own idea of what should happen, whereas I feel that John Walker needs orders, and he will not, like, he is a very good soldier in that sense that he doesn't question orders. He does what needs to be done. He does what people ask of him, and it's only kind of like afterwards that he questions whether or not it was the right thing, but not to the, like, because even when he does like question whether what gave him a medal was a good thing or not, it's not like he's having an existential crisis. It's more kind of like, hey Lamar, do you think that was right? And Lamar's like, yeah, and he's like, oh yeah, of course it was. Like he needs very little encouragement to agree that he's doing the right thing.
Lamar was such an enabler. I was so frustrated with him. I was like, I understand that you're friends, but if you're friends, you should be telling your friend that he's going off the rails a little bit and needs to re-examine some things.
Yeah, he was the wrong kind of hype man for the situation.
Yeah, because there were a few times John questions himself, and Lamar's like, nah, you're good, man.
and that brings in Purple Hair Lady. I understand. I'm just like, why is Elaine from Seinfeld here? Apparently she was supposed to be in the Black Widow movie, and they actually had to like reshoot scenes for her to be in this because originally, of course, Black Widow was supposed to come out way before this. And I don't understand why she needs to be in this series. I guess they're trying to like start the building blocks for a Thunderbolts team, and like that's why she's like the Nick Fury kind of assembling this group of people.
Isn't she literally Nick Fury's ex in the comics?
I didn't know her character from the comics because, again, like I don't know Marvel comics this deeply. So if that's the case, like it's cool that they're again like starting to like build things up. But she just sort of came out of nowhere.
When she showed up, I googled her because I was like, that sounds familiar, but I don't remember what from. And I think it was like at some point she was Nick Fury's, like she's like Nick Fury's ex. That she's involved in spy things and whatever. And at some point, she was Madam Hydra. I don't know if she's like because I've seen a number of comic things with the character Madam Hydra, but like that's kind of a code name. So I don't know if she's like the main Madam Hydra that like I'm familiar with, or if she just at some point had that title of Madam Hydra. But like that's a thing. So she seems like not a great person. She seems real sketch from the very limited Google search I did on her.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, the Thunderbolts are basically like a government-sponsored kind of like anti-hero Avengers team. So Norman Osborn as the Iron Patriot is a part of it, and U.S. Agent, I think, is a part of it, and some other...
I don't think
It's...
Norman Osborn the Norman Osborn Iron Patriot was a different thing. That was the Dark Avengers, which was when a couple people dropped the ball in the comics, and then Norman Osborn did something pretty cool during the Secret Skrull invasion. So they were like, yeah, we'll just give Norman Osborn S.H.I.E.L.D. That did not go well, but he made his own Avengers team, which he led as like Iron Patriot, which was their mix of Captain America and Iron Man. And then he like literally just hired a bunch of like supervillains to like play the roles of classic superheroes. That's a little different than the Thunderbolts, from my understanding, which was an earlier idea, and has had more iterations, and is less, is more obvious about what it is, because the Dark Avengers was trying to pretend to be the Avengers, and they were the public face of the Avengers for a while, at a very dark time in the comics, whereas Thunderbolts have always been a little bit more of a
shadow organization.
Yeah, like more behind the scenes.
Yeah, you're showing me up here. This is definitely the more obscure Marvel comics I know less and less about. So thanks for pointing that out. I guess the biggest spoiler for Falcon the Winter Soldier is that in the end, Sam Wilson, the Falcon, it becomes the new Captain America.
Woo!
Hooray!
And I was surprised in the last episode when he shows up. I'm like, that is pretty much a comics accurate version of the Sam Wilson Captain America costume.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that was
which people have opinions on. I liked it personally. I thought it looked cool.
I think it really worked into his whole relationship with Isaiah and how he was trying to show that, no, I am going to be a black man fully wearing the super Captain America red, white, and blue, right? Especially when you contrast it with John Walker later, who's just wearing black and red as U.S. Agent. Like, there is something about the symbolism of, you know, not just the shield, but the suit being very, very bright and also mostly white.
Yeah,
white is not a flattering color.
No, but it has meaning behind it, I think, and that was the kind of the point.
I don't know. I thought it made him, because he is, he's black. It popped. I thought the contrast worked really well. Like, that amount of white, like, on Steve Rogers would have washed him out. It didn't wash Sam out, for obvious reasons.
The only thing I thought that was cool, a little unnerving, was his ear.
His ear
that
holes
looked weird.
Also, someone pointed this out, like, on Reddit, and I was like, oh, you right. They're just like, I couldn't stop staring at his very exposed top of his head, and he's not a super soldier, so all someone has to do is, because presumably there's vibranium in the suit because the Wakandans made it, but, like, all someone has to do to, like, kill him is, like, smush in the top of his head, because it's completely...
Well, also, he's the one, Captain America doesn't fly, or Steve Rogers doesn't fly, so you're giving the guy who can fly and isn't a super soldier no helmet.
Yeah. They might tweak it before a movie. I don't know.
But to be fair, Sam has never had a helmet.
Yeah.
No, he hasn't. I just any superhero costume where you're like basically wearing like a sock up your head that doesn't, and then the top of your head is exposed just for your hair. I'm like, even in comics like Cyclops or any of these characters that have that, I don't know how to describe it. It's not really a mask because it doesn't quite cover your face. It's just like a big windsock you're wearing over your head, and your ears often pop out. I don't think it's ever a good look on anyone.
It's funny too because Sam has almost no hair, so it's like, would you really have been that like annoyed if you had like a helmet over your hair, bud?
Okay, but if it'd been covered, he'd look like Frozone.
That's the other thing too. Yeah, like that costume would not look good if he was just wearing he was just like an egg, like white on top as well.
Are you saying Frozone doesn't look good?
Once again,
well,
it's a good contrast.
Yeah.
But he's a cartoon, which is the thing. You can get away with more stuff with cartoons and comic books. Yeah. I don't know. A lot of people seem to not like the costume. I thought it worked, and like considering it's a pretty comics accurate costume that they translated to real life, it looks a lot better than a lot of those would.
Yeah, I mean, I was never a huge fan of like the costume Sam Wilson wore in the comics when he was Captain America anyway. So I'm like, well, I appreciate them doing their best to like recreate that on screen. I'm glad you mentioned his speech in the last episode because I too was like, holy moly, like we get it, man. Quit preaching. But the second time I watched it, I guess because I knew how long the speech was going to go on for, it didn't bother me as much.
Yeah, like, and I think, well, I mean, Bucky kind of comments like on it too, like that he kind of missed it because he was texting, but like in the moment I was like that, and then when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, but he wasn't actually giving that speech to the audience. He wasn't even giving that speech like like. I feel it would have been too long if he was like on TV making a speech, right? Like standing, staring at the camera. But because he was talking to somebody, you know, when you're trying to convince somebody and get like to make your point to a specific person, you tend to repeat yourself or go on a little bit more. You know what I mean?
And it shows how eloquent he is, and that he does have a, unlike Carly, who is a stupid idealistic teenager who decided to take matters into her own hands and just make the worst decisions based off her ideals. He does have an idea of what he's talking about. He knows there's no easy answers, but he thinks that they need to be looking for some other answers than the ones they've currently decided on, and he is very eloquently explaining that to people and saying that this is the thing I'm passionate about. I think you're making the wrong decision. These are the reasons why. I'm not gonna just blow up a building and kill some people to show that I'm mad like an angsty teenager would.
And I think also like the speech was the culmination of the last 3 episodes of personal reflections from him.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is a lot of like, because I feel like honestly, if you were going to cut something from that episode, I would have cut the conversation Bucky has with Carly, because it, like, yeah, I get it. It was just to distract Bucky in universe, but it really did not add anything. Bucky was never going to convince her of anything. If
someone was going to do it, it would have been Sam.
Yeah.
So do you? I obviously the way the show presents itself is that Sam was the correct choice, and obviously like he was Steve's choice because Steve gave him the shield. But you do get a sense, you see a lot of Sam's character, the way he kind of acts as a foil to all these other characters, like the way he contrasts from Bucky. It's like, okay, yeah, you can clearly see like he's a more emotionally intelligent, more well-rounded human being. And then you see him in contrast to Carly and Isaiah and John Walker. You get the sense that like, okay, yeah, like he is kind of like the best part of all of these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they did a very good job of and once again, this is why it's good it was a TV show, not a movie. They had time to explore why this person is the right person to fill those shoes.
And also even just like the couple of montages of him training did show that he was willing to put the effort in. Because like, and I feel like that is slightly contrasted with like when they show the footage of John Walker using the shield when they like present him as Captain America. He's like immediately proficient with it. He's already super well trained and able to do these things, whereas like Sam had to work for it and had to actually try to do it, which I think like, because it's something like people don't talk about, but it's kind of there. Like Steve had to work before he got the serum. He had to prove himself. And yes, they picked John Walker because he had proven himself, but he had proven himself in a very specific environment, which is exactly what makes him a good U.S. agent, good at following orders, good at doing what needs to be done, but not necessarily a good Captain America, a good bastion of moral, which they've taken the time to show Sam as being that and being able to help other people. Like even just the entire thing about building the boat, it's more than just building a boat, right? It's him being there for his community, being there with his family, being able to bring people together,
embracing his history.
Exactly.
And I just, we mentioned Isaiah Bradley again recently, just I really liked his relationship with Isaiah, and I thought they handled that whole thing very well, and that one, obviously, and showing that people have different opinions. Obviously, Black people are not a monolith. They don't all think the same things, and they don't all have the same opinions on how to deal with the same things they all have struggled with.
Right.
And that Isaiah made some good points, to be fair, and like Sam respected him and listened to him and was like, obviously you've been through like I've had to deal with stuff as a Black man, but still nowhere near the level of stuff you've had to deal with. I understand where your bitterness comes from, and I don't blame you for that at all. But then also being like, I, as a different person, am making this choice that I believe in this country enough, I believe in this world enough, I believe in these ideals enough, that I'm willing to make myself a target for people because I want to push the world forward and not just give in to this idea, well, you can't be that, and just being that is making a statement that it wouldn't otherwise be. And it shouldn't have to be a statement, but right now it is, and I think it's worth making that statement so that someday in the future it won't be a statement anymore. And I thought they explored that really well, and that was beautifully done, and just really made you appreciate why this is Captain America and why he is pretty much the main character. Like, Bucky's, there too, but like Sam's a bit more of a main character than Bucky is in this series, I think. And that's why, because they needed to take time to explore and show that there is a lot of stuff he's going to have to deal with that Steve never would have had to, and he's still willing to do it by the end because he believes in it, and that's awesome, and that's what a hero should be.
I think also just because I remember when Isaiah first said that no respecting Black man would ever want to be Captain America or ever want to pick up the shield, and you immediately see that that's not for you to decide.
Yeah,
but it's nice that Sam did. Also,
Sam took that in and was like, yeah, you know what? I disagree with you.
But it wasn't a reactive, I disagree with you, I'm going to do it despite you. It was very much, no, I think there's something better.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, this series is not really essential viewing, because if you're just following the movies, which I don't think anybody is, but if they remember Endgame, it ends with Sam being past the shield, and then if they go see Captain America 4 and he's Captain America, they're like, okay, like this is the progression, and this is like the additional kind of stuff they can go and look at if they want to.
They don't know there was a really weird little blip in the middle there.
So, coming around to final thoughts, at this point, I'm comfortable saying I enjoyed The Falcon and the Winter Soldier more than WandaVision. It's definitely more the kind of political thriller MCU story that I enjoy. It's more conventional Marvel movie, I guess, even though it is a 6-hour television event. So it does things like spend time with characters and allows for breathing that you wouldn't get in a movie. And the director of the series is from Ottawa, Ontario. So that's a fun little shout out for the city I live in. I want to hear from you guys, your final thoughts before I give a back cookie.
I agree. I think it was a better show than WandaVision. Not to say that WandaVision was bad, but I think it was more balanced and better written, and had more depth to it. Though I will agree that WandaVision is still great and has done good things in its own right. And I think that it's also, I enjoyed not just the themes, but also the tone of the story a lot more. Honestly, there are a few small disappointments I have because I had some anticipations. Mephisto never showed up. No, but there were some things that I thought might be nice for them to build upon that they didn't, but there's still time.
I don't think it's fair to compare it to WandaVision. I know everyone's going to because they're the only two MCU shows that exist so far. But just like it's not fair to compare Sam and Steve, they have different strengths and weaknesses. And WandaVision was more my type of... it was more up my alley. Like, it had to do a lot less to, like, get me in its corner. I'd have to watch it again to decide how I really feel about it. But this show, it's not, like, a lot of this... It's not my genre. It's not my inherent type of show that I like watching, really, and it still grabbed me. and it still did a good job, and it explored the characters very well. And yeah, it's a really good show. I liked it. I thought it did its job well. It definitely ended better than WandaVision, that's for sure. It like completed the story better.
So this gets a 3.5 out of 4 bad cookies from me.
I'll give it 3.3. I think there's a few nitpicks I have, and I know they're nitpicks, but I still think that they could have done a few things a little bit better as a Marvel property.
I'll give it like 3.5.
There we go. So apparently this is the most successful or most watched Disney Plus show to date, and I think it has the benefit of like having more Disney Plus subscribers that have come in over and maybe that'll be the case with every new Disney Plus show that's a huge property. So obviously a lot of people have already seen it, and if you have Disney Plus and you haven't seen The Falcon the Winter Soldier yet, please give it a watch.
If you want to reach the show, you can send us an email at
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
You can find the Bat Jar Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, because we got a channel. Share our posts on Facebook, write reviews, give our shows a rating. This will help all people join us inside the Bat Jar, and we appreciate it dearly.
So it's time to go into the Bat Jar. I find we're going to talk about next week. I know you're dreading talking about the Mortal Kombat movie, Beef Pork Ribs. So we can just to say that's what we're going to do next week, or we can delay it further and go into the jar.
I think I needed to delay at least one more week. I saw the trailer again, and I don't. Yeah, I have very conflicted feelings about it.
Okay, here we go. Okay, Disney from 1973 to 1988.
Ooh, nice.
So this is another episode where we're ranking all the Disney movies that came out in a certain period of time. I think this is like one of the darkest, and I mean that tonally and just quality-wise, periods of Disney's animated history. So
Black Cauldron is in there, I think.
Yes, it is. Oh boy.
Yeah, good.
So come back to the Bad Sharp Podcast next week and we talk about animated Disney movies released between 1973 and 1988. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
I'm Mjolnir.
Catch you on the flip side.
I was trying to remember the Russian words that Zemo says.
17 was one of them, and freight car was another. Rusted 17 freight car. That's not the right order. I don't know.
Homecoming.
Yeah, because some of the references were more topical when that movie came out. Anyway, toodles.